Okay, so I'm here today to talk to you about some infrastructure modelling that we're doing. I'll quickly do an introduction to who we are in GoUnpackaged and then tell you about the work that we're doing. So we are a consultancy, we work with businesses and government. We do three things. So we come up with solutions, so we work within industry to solve problems. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Refill Coalition work we've been doing, and our reports are there if anyone wants to take one. We do consultancy, so HORECA, textiles, grocery retail, any company that wants to move from single use to reuse. We help them from wherever they are on their journey to where we think they should be. And then we work on policy and research, so we have a foot in government as well, national, local government, because we need to create the enabling conditions for reuse to thrive. So I've been here talking for about the last 5 years of this big project that we did. So this is the Refill Coalition work that we did in the UK, and we did two things. We did an in-store version and an online version. So the in-store is in-store refill, the online is pre-fill. And what we did is try and work out what do these reusable items need to be to withstand the rigors of the supply chain so that we can get multiple rotations. So we redesigned the hoppers that you'll see a lot of them out there and that I used to have in many years of a zero waste shop, so that they're filled at source by the manufacturer. So they could be filled by Nestle, come out to Tesco, go back to Unilever, come out to Morrison's. The whole idea is to have completely standardized business-to-business packaging. And then the charmingly ugly bulk containers are on the right-hand side. So that's Ocado, who are our biggest online delivery company. And the idea was to create something that wasn't beautiful. So this is in opposition to, for example, the Loop project, where it's about having very, very attractive packaging. We said, well, what happens if we actually give them something that isn't very attractive and lots of messaging that we want it back? Can we get the rotations back? So just to give you, and it's really important to understand these learnings, because this is a 5-year live trial of what consumers actually want to do. So we got a 30% sales share in store and about a 20% sales share online. That's pretty big, given that we were only in a few stores and we didn't have anything like national marketing campaigns, anything like that. The consumers, the research showed that they found the packaging to be clean, hygienic, easy, quick. All of the things, all of the reasons that people say reuse can't work is not borne out if you create the right system. Operational, really, really important from the supply chain perspective. So we've got an online return rate of 86% with no deposits because Ocado didn't want to penalise anyone through putting extra deposits on. And we've defined new wash protocols, because obviously we don't have a lot of really good wash protocols for reuse yet, although a lot of people are working on them. And then more importantly of everything is the LCA showed that all of our products perform better at scale than single use, apart from oats in an unlined paper bag, because obviously you're just comparing paper. There is a 110-page LCA report there if anybody would like it, but everything's online, and the white paper has more of our learnings, because we really wanted to share the learnings to get them across the sector. There's no point everyone doing trials and then keeping the information to themselves. So all of this is great, but it's one trial. Okay, it's multiple retailers, multiple brands, but it's still just a trial. So alongside this work, this is what's going on in the UK. So we have a problem. We have many problems because of Brexit. One of the problems we have because of Brexit is that we don't have the PPWR. So we don't have the same drivers that you do with the PPWR, yet all companies that sell in the UK have a European or global supply chain, so we have to align with the PPWR, but we don't quite have the same drivers. And there's a bit of question over, how much we can be seen to be copying what's in Europe because of the Brexiteers. So we have something called the UK Plastics Pact, which is run by our colleagues at WRAP, which was one of the first Plastics Pact in cahoots with all of the Plastics Pact and the Ellen MacArthur Global Foundation, Global Commitment. What have we achieved? I don't know, 2% reuse, 3% reuse? You know, there was a whole target of having, by 2025, all packaging was meant to be reusable or recyclable. We're not getting there through voluntary agreements. Individual retailer trials, some of us have done very well with them. Are they scaling? And now we have something called the Circular Economy Task Force. So DEFRA is the government department for the environment, and we have been tasked with coming up with a circular economy strategy, which we're behind every other country, as usual. And obviously, reuse in packaging creates a huge part of that. So we're trying to drive a reusable packaging strategy as part of the overall circular economy strategy. The really interesting thing at the minute is the individual retailers have now all worked out that they really, really need to work together. So we now have two things going on, which is a group of retailers working together really outside any formal agreement, but just saying we need to align on something. We're probably going to align on a returnable system, so pre-fill. And then we've got the task force from government, which actually can say, what do you need? What does industry need to get everyone to move together? And I would argue that the PPWR didn't go far enough because, yes, it's great for HORECA, it's great for transit packaging, beverage packaging, but for the majority of items that a consumer has in their basket, it doesn't solve most of those problems. So the way we look at it is we need to change the perceptions about reuse. At the minute, everyone just says the cost is going to go up and the consumers don't want it. Well, our trial shows that about 30% of consumers with very little marketing will just immediately switch. And what we should be doing to think about reuse is actually think about supply chain efficiencies. So we have a huge opportunity now to redesign packaging for reusable packaging that is optimized for the supply chain. So just a very easy example, if you have a bottle in a case of 12 or 24 bottles, you've got about 20% air in the top of that case. Make it square, make it cube out the box, then you cube out a pallet, you cube out a lorry, and your 20% efficiency makes it 20% cheaper because you can get more goods on each lorry. So once you start redesigning packaging to make it more efficient, you can actually start gaining some economic headroom to invest in reuse, and that's how we need to think about it with industry. If EPR works, extended producer responsibility, we should be able to drive people through reuse by modulating the fees so that less fees are applied to reuse. In the UK at the minute, we have the only incentive for reuse within EPR is that you only pay for the first time the packaging is placed on market. We've got no targets, nothing else. Right now, that's not enough of an incentive, so we're looking within the task force as to how we might change that. You obviously in France also have the 5% monies ring-fenced to invest in infrastructure. We really need something like that. There's a huge dematerialization question that we can prove with reuse. So you can massively reduce emissions and you can massively reduce both the materials going in and the waste coming out, which should bring down everyone's costs. And there is consumer demand for it. So the background to this infrastructure research project is about 2 years ago, we were thinking, why is no one looking at this from a macro level in the country? So we've got all these individual trials. Nobody can scale because there's no infrastructure, so that everyone is having to set up their own infrastructure. And I always liken it to, it's like every retailer running their own MRF. It makes no sense. So we started working on this, and we thought, okay, so we think we put about 90 billion items of single-use packaging, mainly plastic, onto the market every year. If you do 30% reuse, back of an envelope, that's about 520 million items a week that we need to sell to consumers, get back, put round a system, wash, clean, send back to fillers ready for filling. So it's like, well, if we're going to create a plan, we might as well create a plan that can handle at least this. So we know we need investment, we need infrastructure, we probably need some legislation, we need a timeline, so everyone thinks it's going to take us about 10 years to get there, and we need a plan so everyone can work together. The problem with all of this is nobody knows how much it's going to cost. So we have got a supply chain modeling tool which we use with our corporate clients. So if you're a drinks manufacturer and you want to compare a single-use bottle system to a fictional reusable system, we can run that through our model, and I'll explain how it works. And it basically spits you out a load of information about cost reductions, EPR avoidance, emissions reductions, and material waste reductions. So I said to the modeling team, can we do this for a whole country? And they're like, oh, it's quite complicated, but this is what we did. So we've modeled 7 different scenarios, which I'm going to talk you through, 25 different categories, and 216 SKUs. So the way we did that is we took a lot of the research that has already been done about the most likely categories. We ran it through an analysis system over what could work in reuse, and we came out with sort of 216 individual SKUs that could reach 30%, so that had enough volume to hit 30%. And the 7 scenarios that we modeled are, so everything compares to single use. So the point of this modeling is to say, is it more expensive, is it better or worse than the current single-use system? We then modeled out single use with a fictional, oh, is that still working? A fictional single-use DRS, so a 20p deposit per item, mainly because my worry is everyone's going to say, our bottles and cans DRS comes in 2027, and my worry is everyone's going to say, oh, we don't need to do reuse because we can just do single-use DRS, and that's going to solve the problem. And my intuition is it's not going to solve the problem. So I wanted to do both. Right. Then we did 4 reusables. So the first one is citizen take back to store. RVMs, people taking them back. Second one was existing online deliveries. So online in the UK is about 12%. So what happens if those lorries are already coming out? They've got empty capacity going back. So can they take them backwards and forwards? Next one is household collection from a third-party pooler. So that could be anything. It could be Loop, it could be existing waste management, it could be DHL. It's like, where is capacity in logistics that could do this work rather than putting on additional cost? Fourth one is household collection. So can it fit in? See, the easiest thing for consumers is to have another bin in their house. So they have food waste, they have cardboard, their metal, then they've got their reusables. Then what we did is we modeled a refill in-store scenario. Now, I think it's fair to say that UK retailers are very anti-refill in-store. They don't like it. But the problem is all of these have to be managed by a system that all costs money. Whereas with refill in store, if consumers are bringing their own packaging, taking it back, washing it themselves, then there's an argument to say, well, why don't we try and meet some of this system reduction with refill in store for the right products? Additionally, there are products in those categories and SKUs that will never make environmental sense, will never make commercial sense putting them into reusables because you're trying to replace really, really, really cheap film packaging. And commercially, it will just never stack up once you've got the logistics in there. So at that point, industry has a question. Do you sell it and take the hit on the money? Do you not sell it? Do you keep it in single use? Do you use refill in store? So this is what we wanted to do. And these are our partners. So the whole point was to get partners across the supply chain. We've got our partners from Berry over there. So everyone from plastic packaging manufacturers to retailers to waste management to government, because the whole point is this isn't an academic study that's going to take 3 years to do. This is actionable information. So the way the model works, I am not the modeler. It's deeply clever and I don't understand a lot of it. But what we do is we basically put in all of the different nodes or activity centers, and then we switch on the activity. So everything has an activity and a cost and an emissions factor and a waste factor attached to it. So it's everything from, forklift truck, lifts pallet and take something from this side to this side of a distribution center. Literally there are thousands of activities in this model which are costed. A lot of it we've done with industry data, we've had partner data, and we've got just benchmarking as well. Some of it we've had to make assumptions, and we are very open and honest. There will be a technical annex in the research that says what assumptions we've made. If people come along with different, better data, then we can just update the model. So we're trying to be really open and honest about what we can and can't achieve. So then we have to put in various assumptions. So we've put in the percentage of reuse, the reuse rate, the trip lives, the lifespan. What we've done is we've actually modeled our baseline at 97%. And I know everyone is going to go, that's a super high return rate, are you going to get it? The thing is we're trying to imagine a time in the future where reuse is the norm. And we have to imagine a system working at scale. But we've done sensitivity analysis at 80 to 90% to see whether it blows it out the water. And then we've also done the cycle times, as everyone in reuse knows, how long it takes to get it back. So as I said, each scenario we're going to be told what the costs are to set up and run it, what the PEPR reduction costs are, the emissions cost reduction, and the waste reduction. The worst thing about today is it's a month before we release the results, so I can't tell you what the results are. But the headline results are, it is really, really interesting when you get to reuse at scale because you can bring reuse systems in at cost parity or cheaper than the single-use system, all right? So I can't tell you more than that at the minute, which is really frustrating, I know. But this idea and these opinions that exist that, oh, single-use packaging is really, really cheap and logistics and management and washing is really expensive is not true. And you are starting to see, if you want to dematerialize the supply chain, which we all have national, European, and hopefully global targets, the only way you're going to do it with reuse is through reuse. You are not going to achieve it by DRS systems with single-use packaging. So what we've done in the report is we've created a comparison of all the impacts across the scenarios, and then we've done this future state analysis where we've said, right, if it's going to take 10 years to get to 30%, what happens if you try and hit a 10% and a 20%? What's the CapEx spend? It's a fraction. So the fact that you guys have 5% of EPR monies ring-fenced for reuse, it's about the same number that's coming out in our modelling. So it is not crazy amounts of money because to start off with, because of the volumes, you don't need thousands of new filling lines and production lines and wash centres. You need an extension of what already exists. So it's all possible. It's just we have to get everyone from industry and government facing in the same direction. And the point of this research is to try and help bring some evidence to that. We're then putting some funding mechanism ideas in there. So in the UK, the government is very, very good at taking on risk, funding things, and then taking no returns from the upside of it. I mean, globally, you know, the amount of public money that went into things that now Apple and everyone benefit from, it's not new. But so we're trying to say, well, what happens if government pump primes? So that's what we've done with energy from waste. You know, the government puts a lot of money in to get the system moving, to get that infrastructure in. How does government get that money back? Could they have a tiny, tiny levy on every wash so it doesn't affect industry too much, but it starts bringing back that return for government? So we're putting in some provocations around that and then recommendations from industry and government. But we know that the retailers are waiting for the results of this research because it's going to show from all these factors, so cost, EPR reduction, emissions and waste, what the best categories are to do. Now they may all do slightly different categories, but it does mean that they can align. It also shows that you can actually reduce, so those 216 individual SKUs were single-use SKUs. We then have a corresponding reusable packaging type. You can reduce that down to about 30, so it's going to be really interesting to compare that with the CTO colleagues on the types of packaging that have been chosen for the big trial and actually understand the similarities in standardization across that. So we're hoping that that information will feed into all of the standardization work that's going on globally. So we are launching it on Monday the 23rd of June. If anyone's in London and would like to come, we'd love to have you. The report will be published online on the 24th of June, and then we're doing an online global webinar on the 3rd of July, so please do join that. And then the really exciting bit is we're going to do it all again. So when we started the research, I wanted to do grocery, retail, and food service, so HORECA, really closed-loop environments, as well as takeaways, events, festivals, things like that. So if we're thinking about how we create infrastructure, so washing logistics, you might as well do it for the grocery sector and for HORECA at the same time because it's going to be the same consumer-sized packaging. And I do think we've got a real opportunity to move to reuse faster within closed-loop environments because people are producing and consuming on site. And actually that would bring a huge amount of volume into the system, which would then get us up to our capacity levels, which would justify the infrastructure. So yeah, so we're going to repeat it, hopefully starting in September with some of our existing partners and new partners for food service. And then what we'd really like to do is, so we're talking to partners in Belgium and Netherlands and France. We'd love to do it for other markets, because if you could match all of that research up, then suddenly you start to get a sort of European and a global picture as well. So yeah, so I'm so sorry that I can't give you the full results. Maybe I'll be allowed back next year with the full results, but you can join us on the events.
Just one working? Yeah? Okay. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Are we doing Q&A or am I doing that later?
We're going to do it.
Okay, great.
We're going to do it. Yes, please just...
I come closer to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I got one prepared question
I
for
can't
you.
even remember what it was, but
Yeah,
it'll be fine.
yeah. Just say that it's kind of a surprise.
Okay, great.
Who are the most likely actors for you, in your opinion, like public authorities, private companies, consumer, to support the upfront and ongoing costs of the reuse infrastructure? And how can investment be fairly distributed, in your opinion?
So I think I can answer half of that. So I think unless we can get industry to want to do this, we're lost. You know, there's no point. You can't just, well, I'd say in Europe, you are better at legislation forcing businesses to do things. In the UK, we are very, very business-led. So we've got to create the incentive for them to do it. EPR is driving that. 100% is driving that because producers in the UK are facing a huge bill, especially glass, because it's done on weight. So that's definitely focusing minds onto reuse. So at the minute, I think it's really about showing what's viable, showing and explaining the cost-saving potential, and then, as I said, then the job of government is to sort of get that spark. I think there's a lot of bad blood in the UK about how the new reforms, so we've got something called the collection and packaging reforms, which is effectively EPR and DRS. The process that they have been brought in, even government would say that it's been a terrible process. And I think part of the problem is government's gone in and told industry how to do it. And my feeling at the minute is we need to tell industry where we expect them to get to, 30%, and let them work out the most efficient way to do it. Because if there's one thing that the grocery supply chain can do is efficiencies. So, yeah, at the minute, I think it's about government providing that spark or that tipping point. Now, whether that's through targets, whether it's through making EPR and single-use so unpleasant that they move to reuse, and then helping industry to see the commercial benefits from it.
Okay, so it could be like now you will have a single-use DRS in 2027, right? So there is a big opportunity for you to integrate reuse at the first day of this system. It will.
Yeah, so our huge challenge is that nobody in DRS has thought about reuse.
Okay.
So at the minute, I think they're saying it's going to cost 1.2 billion to invest in the infrastructure for a single-use DRS. And literally what keeps me up at night is the fact that industry will say, it's cost us 1.2 billion, we can't possibly invest in reuse. So right now, I'm trying to work out what the levers are within government and within industry, because the problem with DRS is it's been delayed and delayed and delayed. So the political will to delay anything anymore is zero. Industry are fed up with it, and I understand that. But I don't know at the minute how we solve it and how we get people to think about reuse. So really interesting to talk about the Latvia experience. Like, how do you run single-use and reuse systems together? As you said, the challenge for France. My feeling is, as a consumer, is you don't want to be asked to do different things with different packaging. I mean, it's bad enough being a packaging expert. I still don't know what things go in the right recycling bin sometimes. So I think trying to say, well, you've got to do this when it's reusable and this when it's single use is going to be a disaster for the average person, and fair enough. So for me, I think, how do we bring it in so it's a system? So in the UK, they separate, metals and cans, plastics and food waste, and it just becomes another reusable bin for that. But the flip side of that is waste is very, very political in the UK. And we had a huge problem in Rishi Sunak's government where a very good idea about separating waste became something that the right-wing press picked up on, and it was, you're going to have 11 bins outside your house, and it destroyed it immediately. So it's a really careful balance we've got in the UK at the minute.
And for now, I understand that you don't have any reuse fund managed by the producer responsibility organization like in France.
No.
So you don't have this 5% fund. In France, it's like 50 million a year on 1 billion, but the cost of the curbside system in terms of how they support it. So you don't have this fund. No,
so we don't even have a PRO yet. So that's just being set up for EPR. The DMO's just been appointed for DRS, and we have to work out now our legislation at the minute, we cannot legally ring fence monies for reuse. So either we're going to have new legislation, it's tricky, or we're going to have to find some other way of doing it. So that's what, at the task force level, that's what we're trying to work out at the minute, is like, how do we get this through? Because yes, we hear what industry is saying, that it's going to be about 10 years to get us to something like 30%. Okay, the activist in me thinks it's far too long, but I'd rather they did it properly. But how do we get there? Because if we wait for legislation, we can't start the planning now. So in a way, I'd like to get to a point where this is something that industry wants to do regardless of legislation, because if they want to do it, they'll do it.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. We have the time for 1 or 2 questions from the public who want to ice break this session with the first question. Yes. Give you a microphone. Yeah. Guys? Hello? This one.
1, 2. Thank you, Catherine, for the presentation. How are you integrated with ADEME, for example, for all the studies? Because last year, I think ADEME released a big analysis, a big life cycle analysis on reuse in France. How are the different organizations collaborating, maybe in sharing numbers or modeling profile?
So I don't know if I fully understood the question. How are we sharing life cycle analysis information?
With other organizations like the ADEME in France.
Well, I mean, we made everything from the Reuse Coalition public. It's in a report, it's online, and we've been as honest as we can. We contracted Eunomia to do ours, so we went through a third-party tendering process. I mean, my recommendation is everyone shares information, so if there's somewhere that you think that information needs to go, then happy to share.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Brilliant work, by the way.
Thank you. Do you have a last question before we... Yes? Can we come back with it? Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Catherine. Charlie from RAP. Well done. Nice speech. I had a quick question about your second slide, which is basically talking about the market shares.
Yes.
For the refill and the return. So one was in-store and one was online. There was a 30% market share for in-store models and a 20% share for online.
For our trial where the products were available. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying across the UK market or anything.
I was just wondering if you could understand why there was the difference of 10% between providing it online and providing it in store, or whether it was because of like the consumer demographics, for example, like those people who tend to shop at Ocado might be different from people who shop at Aldi.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could elaborate slightly on the consumer aspects there.
Partly I have to remember what was public information in this report.
Sorry.
Well, it's interesting because Aldi is traditionally not a premium shopping experience, whereas Ocado traditionally was. Because Ocado was set up with Waitrose, which is more the premium end of the market, and we got a higher sales share in Aldi, so that's interesting in itself. Online shopping is really challenging for reuse. So they had 2 own brand cleaning, laundry liquid and fabric softener. I think there was an agreement that those may not have been the most preferable formulations for customers. So had we done that with big brands, names, we might have seen a different sales share. I think that dragged down the number a bit. But the most interesting bit that I didn't realize is when people do online shopping, they buy the same basket every week. So everyone has their basket set up where they have their core items, and then they maybe tweak around the edges. So actually, it is it's just as difficult, or even possibly more difficult, to get people to change what they buy online than it is in a store. So in a store, everyone's on autopilot, still buying brands and things off the shelf. But actually, it's really, really hard to do it online. And then the problem that both of those projects suffered is because they were only available. So for Ocado, they were only available to half of their consumers. They couldn't plaster it everywhere. They couldn't do national campaigns. So actually only a smaller percentage of their customers saw it. So you've got to think that if they become a nationally available product, then the visibility is just so much bigger in store and online. But yeah, there was the huge learning of how difficult it is going to be to get people to come out of their regular shops online and try new products. That was the biggest learning from that. But it's still higher. So the previous refill in store solution offered by Aldi didn't even hit 10%. So basically 10% was our benchmark for both of them. And from the off, they over-delivered on that. So my hunch is that there's about 30% of the population that is ready and willing to switch to reuse without very much encouragement. Great, let's start with them. Let's stop worrying about them, because 30% is still our 500 million items a week we've got to deal with. I mean, that's a pretty big share. So let's focus on that and then work out like the more complicated consumers. I also think if you were to delist some of the single use that sits around it, people would very, very quickly switch over without it being a problem. Some of our partners were interested in delisting, but we never got to that stage. But there is more appetite than you might imagine within the retail environment for delisting, because it makes it easier for them. As long as their customers want it, they're happy to delist things, because then it's just less products to manage. So yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. So big upload for you. Thank you so much.